I would love to start with the song that we talked about. I remember the last time we got on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
The story you shared really moved me to tears, and here's the reason why. When you shared with me how your sister wrote the perfect day for that day.
She wrote it in her diary, yeah.
Yeah. That girl was me. Because, see, Foxy is my best friend right now. She's what keeps me steady. She's like my emotional support dog, so I get to like take her everywhere I go. But really, she's my grounding.
I totally get that.
And so, imagining what life would have been like if things took the other way and circumstances happened, I could have written that note, you know. So that's why I cried that day when we were on the phone, because that note could have been my note. And a little bit more, I went through a divorce, and that's what inspired me to start the love story, because he was my best friend. He was my rock. So when he left, I was devastated. Now, thinking about the perfect day, that was my perfect day. Like, if I had to imagine what it was like, it would be in his arms, in bed. So that's why the song drew me so much and so powerfully. So I would be so honored if you could play that song.
Yeah, I'd love to. Do you want me to repeat some of the story first, or do you want me to play the song?
We'll just start with the song.
Okay.
Yeah, and we could play it over and over again, and
yeah, till I get it right.
Till you want it, till
all right.
however you want it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Musically, the idea for the song was to break down a popular song, a popular structure for a song, into its most absolutely bare minimum, just to make it stark. And, but, I mean, it wasn't to write a popular song, obviously. So that first entry that said, today was the perfect day. And I don't know how you express the perfect day, and where it goes from the perfect day to so wrong, So I think stripping everything else away and leaving it as visible, as stark as you can. That's kind of what the thought process was. I mean, I love all the stuff that was on the radio when I was growing up, and the production on that, was very rich, and that's the stuff I love. But this didn't seem like it was the right treatment for that song, and I knew I wanted. Well, I really didn't have a choice. I just had to write a song. That's where I got to. Okay. It's for Tracy. You had a perfect day, then you went far away, and all the pain someday to disappear, but you know a single day so long ago could not stop the highs and lows, but on that day when you were you, hope and love and hidden truth, but you you.
So powerful. So powerful. Because I know I hear so much intent of the friendship, the deep connection that you and Tracy shared. And so when you said that you knew she was methodical on that day, she knew that one day you'll tell her story.
Maybe she did. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the first song that I wrote for her. And you know, she's my only sibling, and she and I, you know, you just you have siblings, and I don't think it's like that for every sibling, but there's a certain bond that is there, that, you know, there's a certain level that you know someone, and there's no one else like that. There's no one else who it's a deep-rooted pattern that you understand at a base level about that person, and we definitely had that, and good and bad. You know, it was brother and sister fighting cats and dogs, and it was a deep love, and you know, and suicide is fraught with a level of guilt, and I know Tracy was smart enough to understand that. So it was not easy for her to do what she did.
She's highly intelligent.
Yeah, she was, but very troubled, obviously. But you know
Troubled by what?
Well, that's the story. That's the long story. You know, it was physical. It was emotional. It was, it was having to do with relationships and her lack of being able to connect with people over a long period of time. Yeah.
It was from a broken heart, too.
Yeah, and that was kind of the connection in the song. It was not the reason for her as it is for other people who make that decision, but it was a huge contributing factor. I don't, you know, I mean, when you look around at life, there's so much beauty, and there's horrible things, and you make a decision on what you want life to be. And at one point, we had this conversation on the phone. I said, Tracy, can't you look around and see the flowers and see the sun and see the beauty of the world? And then she said to me, I can't. I'm not like you. And so she lost that ability. And I think part of it was the relationship side. You know, a very difficult, challenging relationship she had with her husband. And at the same time, it was a deep love, and that stayed with her. But that was not the thing that caused her to make the decision.
And as a brother, in that moment where you really wanted to help but didn't know how, what was that like for you?
Oh, there was lots of those moments that I didn't know how, and sometimes it was, it was frustrating, and it made me perplexed. Sometimes it made me angry. You know, I mean, because so maybe we should go back into the history, because that tells the story, and because it's not. It could be a very simple story, but often stories are not. You know, my sister and I were both born in New Jersey, and when my sister was 3.5, I could still remember when her breath started smelling like juicy fruit gum. You know, like that sickly sweet juicy fruit gum, and she had other symptoms which we realized later that were diabetes, juvenile, what's called juvenile diabetes. And when she got the diagnosis of diabetes, my parents were told by doctors that insulin was a cure, that it would, that she wouldn't have to worry. And it was not true, because diabetes is not curable, at least yet. They're getting really close. But what insulin does is it allows you to control your blood sugar levels. You know, when you eat something, there's a small portion of your pancreas which produces insulin, and that insulin counteracts the sugar of the food you eat, and that sugar is then converted into energy. For a normal person, you know, when you eat something, you feel energized because of that. Not with someone with diabetes, because they can't make that conversion. And but what insulin, when they take insulin through an injection, or for older people, or for people with adult onset diabetes, you know, there's other more medical terms, but adult onset diabetes is another term that was older. You know, you have to manually manage the level of sugar in your bloodstream, and it's not an easy task. And as you have diabetes for a long time, many folks have spikes in the blood sugar level, which is harder and harder to manage, and that was happening to my sister. What is termed a brittle diabetic. And so imagine, if you will, not being able to control your day-to-day activities, your emotions, you know, having, you know, like, one thing about depression is to some extent it's chemical. And once you get in a cycle of depression, it seems to like almost feed on itself. And there's a
um, it's like an inescapable addiction. And with diabetes, there's a physical aspect which you cannot escape. And no matter what information my sister and I talked about, this is really just a chemical thing, her her depression was something she could not escape, and her prospects over the course of time looked less and less appealing. There's complications associated with diabetes, and a large number of people who have diabetes develop these complications. I don't know the statistics now, but when she was a child, the statistics were that diabetes was the leading cause of new blindness, of kidney failure. It's a leading cause of heart disease, of poor circulation leading to amputation, gangrene and amputation of the limbs. And it's a while since I've been exposed to some of the statistics, but it is expected to cut life expectancy by a third. And these are things that you live with as a day-to-day issue. And as my sister was getting older, I think the prospect of her facing these horrors happening to her body, which were becoming more and more real, along with other external factors like her divorce, like a neighbor who did horrible things to her, and that led her to a decision. And what I look back now as I'm sure what she considers a pragmatic decision, and a difficult one. But yeah, she was very methodical. I was, besides the emergency people who took her into the hospital, I was one of the first people in the house, and it was spotless. And her suicide note was very detailed.
She's probably a really good storyteller too.
I think she wanted to be. I think the diabetes made her, it made it challenging for her to concentrate on things, which is one of those things. One of the things that you don't have with depression is you don't have control. And one of the things that she lost early on with her diabetes is that she felt like she didn't have control of her life. When you're walking along and all of a sudden your sugars spike, your emotions spike, and you don't have control of your life. And I think that's regardless of who we are, that's a really difficult thing. And with my sister, it was even worse, because this is such a strong desire for her to have control, because she felt like she didn't have it.
But I never thought a career in music would be anything of interest to me, because going to play the songs over and over again, I thought that would be boring. I really did. I thought, here I am, 25 years later, and I'm playing a lot of the same songs that I originally wrote. And what I learned after finally going out and playing for people in different venues on successive nights, which I had never done. I would go and I'd practice my songs, and I'd play once every couple of months, and I'd play at open mics or something like that, and I would play for friends, and I'd play a lot on my own. But I had never played 2 nights in a row until 2009, and then I went and I played. I did a little tour with a friend of mine, which was a lot of fun. But I learned that every time you play, it's a unique experience. It's completely different, which I didn't figure out until I actually did it. Every night you play, like here's the kind of the joke that I had. when you go to a performer and they say, I want to thank you guys. You're the greatest. You're the greatest audience. Thank you for coming out, right? A lot of performers say something like that. And I always thought they're just saying that, like, because you want to thank the audience. But then after I did it, I realized that every audience, every night is a unique thing. I mean, like, it seems like common sense, but you are seeing a unique performance that will never be repeated. And the dynamics in that room, matter of fact, the audience in that room will never be together again. Like even the group of people that are in that particular room will likely never be in the same room again. So I realized that there's this renewal every time you play a song. That's kind of brilliant, and I don't feel the same way about when I first started writing songs. And this will go back to the larger story of my parents' involvement in raising money for diabetes. My dad was executive director of what then was the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, located in South Florida. And he was having a fundraiser in our neighborhood and inviting this girl who wrote this song. Her name was Karen Federuso. And because I had heard the song on a tape, and this is the first time I knew someone who professionally recorded, I didn't know her. I thought that I was going to meet someone who professionally recorded. I was like, wow, I should write a song too. So I wrote this song. And this was like an early attempt at just, writing a song, but this song has stuck with me. I don't think I gave the song the credit that I should have because, I learned a lot from writing this song, and I'll just say from a songwriter perspective, like there's two verses which are the same. The third verse is the same, but I've interpreted the way I sing it differently. The last chorus is different than the other two choruses in the way it's sung. And that I figured out much later. So the whole process of creation is just this ongoing thing. And you don't get that unless you repeat, Today I saw Gary, my friend, but he didn't see me. That damn disease stole his sight. But he's not on his knees, he's up on his feet. You gotta stand on your feet if you wanna fight. There's a light in the darkness, a dream will come to see, between a glimmer of hope and a shadow of doubt. The cure is the key. But my little sister, she was just about 4. She had tears in her eyes through our front door. And I snuck up to visit her in that hospital room. There was hope in her eyes in that hall full of gloom. It was that light in the darkness, a dream will come to see, between a glimmer of hope and a shadow of doubt. The cure is the key. Well, that was so long ago. More than 40 years. Now there's insulin mixed with my sister's tears. She's up on her feet, there's hope in her eyes. That light of hope never dies. There is a light in the darkness, a dream will come to see, between a glimmer of hope and a shadow of doubt. The cure is the key, between a glimmer of hope and a shadow of doubt. The
I totally got the world of that. I got the whole world of that in that song. I heard in that song a brother who's cheering up his sister and who's reflecting back at her that she is the hope, she is the light.
And that she never gave up her own hope, you know. And it's a difficult song now. It's a really difficult song now. I don't play it much, but you know, yeah, it was a thing in my family, especially in my mom, who was, you know, she was ridiculous how she didn't give up hope. But you know, like there's even a line from the song "The Perfect Day" that's hope and love. And that is a reverse. It's kind of an inside thing for me. The foundation, the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, that my parents started, and that is now called the Diabetes Research Institute. They have an event called the Love and Hope Ball, and so it's certainly a reference to those terms explicitly, but it's also referencing that fundraiser. Love and hope were the core, almost belief system of that foundation and of our family, and you know, yeah, the hope is a powerful, is very powerful, but I don't know. Hope is also this thing where when you have unrealistic hope, it could backfire, and you know, it's a very difficult balance. But I will give the people who are involved in the foundation, even today, they have this hope which drives them to continue to find a cure for diabetes, and that's good.
And I hear it in your song. Like, I hear the love and the protective space and the stand for your sister. Because while she was still breathing during that time, you were always hopeful, even when you doubted.
Oh, yeah. We always had hope. Ridiculous, crazy hope. Yeah. Yep.
And now it transferred to the Diabetes Foundation for all the other families who are, you know, they have loved ones who are also living and hoping.
You know, the other person that's mentioned in the song is a guy named Gary, and that's a tribute to another person that we knew while we were growing up. Actually, you know, we're still Facebook friends, of course. Gary Kleinman, the Kleinman family was involved in the foundation, and Gary's a ridiculous person still today, and he's, I think, the one person that so far they've cured. He lost his sight. His brother donated a kidney to him, you know, and after he lost his sight, he continued to play tennis. He continued to sculpt, and he's been a counselor as part of the Diabetes Research Institute for a long time. And yeah, so you know, but he was special when we first met him. You know, he was a really interesting guy, and I think I overstated it when I called him a friend back then, but it's been a long-time family friend. Yeah.
And he probably was the spirit that you needed to hold space for your sister at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, he was a fighter, and that's why I thought he would be, you know, the right person to be in the song with my sister. Yeah. So.
Beautiful. Really powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing such powerful moments.
I mentioned my sister got diabetes when she was 3.5, And we moved from New Jersey to Florida, and then my parents continued to be concerned about the information they got from doctors around diabetes. They didn't talk about all the bad things that would happen to people. And so they met other parents of children with diabetes, and then they gathered in our little apartment in North Miami, and they just decided to form what became the first chapter of what was the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. And my mom became president of the chapter. And then when the national organization didn't focus on research, they didn't commit enough money to research, they decided to split off and start their own organization, which they called the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And my dad left his job and became the executive director. And, you know, my dad and mom did some incredible things. The whole family existed, lived to make that organization successful. And, you know, they weren't the only ones involved, well, not the only ones dedicated, but our family lived and breathed that organization. And the things that were unique is, first of all, they talked very explicitly about the complications of diabetes. Where doctors would not address it, they wanted to make sure that parents understood the dangers of having diabetes for a long time. That if you didn't take care of yourself, you were more likely to get these complications, which is what happened to our friend Gary. You know, he didn't take care of himself. He developed kidney disease, he developed retinopathy, and has very limited vision in one of his eyes, and he's blind in the other eye. And the other thing they did was completely unrealistic at the time, was they decided they were going to take 90% of all money they raise and dedicate it directly to research, versus other nonprofits at the time, for example, the United Way, which had large administrative costs. They were going to only spend 10% on administrative costs, and people thought they were crazy. They'd never be able to do that. Well, now, if you look on Charity Navigator, it's one of the measures that are determine whether an organization, nonprofit, is effective, is how much they give to their cause. And it set a tone that today, although what is now called the Diabetes Research Institute, which was formerly the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, there's another organization that's raised over $1 billion that has adopted what my parents did in terms of the 90-10 split. They don't live up to that completely, but they've gotten a lot closer to it. Hope can be a very powerful motivator, and that's transformative. So I'll fast forward a bit to what happened with my sister. And so my sister, when she was very young, I think she could have been anybody that like anybody successful. She was so smart. She was so grounded. She was so giving and caring, and the disease took its toll over many years. And then she met her husband, and she had that day. But their relationship only lasted a couple of years, and I think it took a toll on her when they got divorced, and her disease continued to take a toll on her. And then the really hard part was, as the disease continued to wreak havoc on her emotional stability, she moved into a house that she bought with the money from her divorce. And there was a neighbor, her next door neighbor. And her next door neighbor was not psychologically sound. And my dad told the neighbor that my sister had emotional problems, that she had diabetes, and hoping that she would be a good neighbor. And then this neighbor had issues with you know, apparently when people would walk by the house with a knapsack, she would call the police. When she had problems with this homeless shelter down the street, she was very nervous about that. But then she started calling different authorities on my sister when maybe the garbage wasn't in the right place or something like that. She would call the authorities when, you know. So my aunt, my stepdad, and I all contributed to get my sister a service animal. I know you know the importance of a service animal. And it was an expensive proposition to get this dog, and this dog, Ginger, my sister fell in love with it, which I knew would happen. You know, I knew that it would give her stability. But then this neighbor started calling animal control. And I don't know how many times, but it was something like 6 times that the animal control came to my sister's house. And I don't think they were for valid reasons. My sister was certainly not abusing this animal in any way. She adored this animal. And Ginger was a sweet dog, but a very, you know, energetic animal. And I think the dog got out of the house a couple times, you know, but the neighbor did not have to call animal control. On the 6th call, the animal control threatened that they were going to take the dog away. It's writing poetry, or it's or just writing, or it's exercising, or whatever it is that you can control. It's the path to get out of that cycle of depression. And so for me, it was that song. And writing that song was the first breakthrough, but it was not the last thing that I needed. Writing the song, what it did is it allowed me to look beyond what I had been going through. And the next step for me was going into a studio and recording that song. And again, that moment of catharsis, when I lived in that moment of the song and then recorded it, it's just like whatever had its hold on me I was starting to break free. And then the third moment was when I performed it for the first time for my friends. And that was really difficult. Standing up in front of people you love, people who know you for, you know, decades, and exposing yourself that way. But being able to perform that song for people, it was a special night. It was at a little club in Santa Monica on Lincoln called Trip. And I just happened to be lucky enough to have my longtime friend who plays bass with me, and a friend of mine who she recorded vocals on my first album, Jennifer Ferguson Smith, and her husband Scott Smith. They're at the show, as well as, you know, my wife and my friends, and it was just a beautiful moment. And you know, so what I take away from this is that it's this transformation from being in a cycle of depression is a process of finding the next thing that you can do that helps you control your own self. And Tracy taught me that.
I tried so hard. I tried everything. I cried so hard. I gave you everything. So concerned, was it a lie? And you turned cross our lines. We dot our T's. We pass our time so foolishly. Oh, we never learn, but some ask why. They will burn after we die. No matter what we feel, no matter what we do, one can't love enough for two. No matter what we feel, no matter what we do, one can't love enough for two.
Woo! Amazing. Thank you so much. And we got that on social media too.
Really?
The millennial generation.